On an ordinary July morning in 1518, Strasbourg woke up to the kind of heat that clings to your skin and follows you everywhere. The sun wasn't even high yet, but the air felt heavy, like the entire city had exhaled and forgotten to breathe back in. Chickens scratched lazily in the narrow dirt alleys. Merchants lifted their wooden shutters with the same enthusiasm as a man waking up for the fourth day of work without pay. And across every building, the scent of bread, sweat and river mud blended into something only medieval Europeans could pretend was normal. Life was predictable. Too predictable. Most people woke up, prayed they wouldn't get sick, swept their door fronts, and tried not to look too closely at the neighbors who seemed a little too thin these days. Famine had been creeping through the region for months. Food was scarce. Tempers were even scarcer. Nobody had the energy to do anything dramatic. Which is why what happened next struck the city like a slap. Near a small crooked house at the edge of the marketplace, a woman named Frau Trophia stepped outside. To anyone watching, she looked normal enough. Maybe a little tired. Maybe worried about the price of flour. But nothing unusual. She stood still for a moment, then, without warning, lifted her arms and began to dance. Not gracefully. Not joyfully. More like her body was being yanked by invisible strings. At first, people assumed she was mocking someone or just had too much cheap wine too early in the day. A couple of kids laughed and pointed. But Frau Trophia didn't stop. Her feet slammed against the ground in uneven rhythms. Her fingers clawed the air like she was trying to snatch something only she could see. Her head jerked back and forth, sweat flying from her hair in droplets that caught the sun. Minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into several. No music. No celebration. Just raw, frantic movement that made everyone uncomfortable. A small crowd gathered, whispering to each other, trying to guess what they were witnessing. Was it madness? A curse? A punishment from God? Or just a woman who finally snapped after months of hunger? The answer didn't matter. What mattered was that she couldn't stop. By midday, she had danced so long her feet began to bleed. Her sandals tore. The skin split open. But still she moved. Every jerk of her limbs felt more unnatural than the last, as though she wasn't in her body anymore. Neighbors rushed to help her, trying to pull her away or make her sit down, but she shoved them back with surprising strength. By the time the sky shifted into evening, the whispers had spread to the far edges of the city. People spoke of the woman who couldn't stop dancing as though she were a bad omen, a warning the summer already heavy with hunger might be about to get worse. Strasbourg had seen strange things before. Plagues, fires, riots. But nothing prepared them for the week that would follow. A week where one woman's frantic, unstoppable dance wouldn't just be the beginning of a mystery. It would become an epidemic. A plague without fever. A disaster without logic. A nightmare disguised as music. And nobody knew that Frau Trophia was only the first. By the next morning, word had spread faster than gossip in a hungry city. People woke up whispering about the woman who had danced through the entire night like her body belonged to someone else. Some thought it was a sign from heaven. Others swore it had to be possession. A few, the ones already tired of life, shrugged and said it was just another weird day in Strasbourg. When the sun cracked open the sky, a curious crowd marched to the marketplace to see Frau Trophia for themselves. They found her exactly where she had been, still dancing, still trembling, still trapped in that same strange rhythm that came from nowhere. Her dress was soaked. Her hair clung to her face. Her legs shook violently, but she didn't stop. Not even when her husband showed up, his face twisted with fear and embarrassment. He begged her to come back inside. She didn't even turn her head. By midday, the heat grew unbearable. The stone walls radiated warmth like ovens. The air clung to everyone's lungs. Still, Frau Trophia moved. Every muscle in her body screamed, but her limbs didn't obey her anymore. It was horrifying, but also impossible to look away. People started staying to watch longer than they meant to. Some out of pity, some out of fear. Some because humans have this unbelievable habit of slowing down to stare at anything tragic. Then, in the late afternoon, something even stranger happened. A man in the crowd jerked suddenly. His arm twitched. His foot tapped the ground in a quick, nervous rhythm. At first people assumed he was mocking her, the way children copy each other. But then his whole body lunged forward, and he began to dance too. Not with joy. Not with control. Just like Frau Trophia, as if an invisible hand yanked him into motion. Gasps rolled through the crowd. People backed away. Mothers grabbed their children. The man's shoulders snapped back, his movements wild and uneven. Sweat poured down his face as he spun and stomped, his breaths coming out sharp and broken. Frau Trophia didn't even glance at him. It was as though she was trapped in another world entirely. By sunset, 2 more people had joined. A woman with trembling hands who began swaying, eyes wide with terror, and a young apprentice who collapsed twice but jerked back to his feet as if refusing his own exhaustion. Just like that, the dancing plague had grown from 1 sufferer to 4. The city felt wrong that evening. Streets were quieter. Doors were shut earlier than usual. Neighbors spoke in low voices, glancing toward the marketplace as if expecting more bodies to start twitching in the shadows. Priests visited doorsteps, warning families to avoid the dancers as if they carried a curse in their bones. Doctors, the kind who were still arguing whether bad air or bad angels caused sickness, inspected the dancers with the confidence only clueless men can manage. Their official verdict wasn't comforting. They claimed it was a hot blood problem. In simple terms, the dancers wanted to dance. As if the bleeding feet and terrified eyes didn't tell a different story. Still, the worst part wasn't their terrible diagnosis. It was their solution. The doctors recommended the dancers should continue dancing. Yes, dance even more. Let the movement burn out the sickness, they suggested. Let them wear themselves to exhaustion. The officials of Strasbourg, stressed, hungry and short-tempered, actually agreed. So instead of stopping the madness, they prepared to fuel it. The plan was simple. Very medieval. Very stupid. They decided to give the dancers music. And tomorrow, the city would learn what happens when you try to cure a nightmare by increasing it. By mid-July, the phenomenon was no longer confined to just Frau Trophia. Reports began pouring in from the streets of Strasbourg. What started as a single woman dancing uncontrollably had grown into a strange epidemic. Scores of people, men, women, even children, joined in, unable to resist the compulsion to move. The city's narrow streets, once filled with vendors and townsfolk going about their daily routines, were now flooded with dancing bodies, twirling, leaping, and staggering as if caught in some invisible frenzy. Physicians and city officials observed in horror as the dancers grew weaker, their faces pale, their muscles cramped from exhaustion. Some collapsed in the streets, only to rise moments later, pulled by the rhythm that seemed to have taken on a life of its own. The cries of onlookers mingled with the pounding of feet against cobblestones, creating a surreal soundscape of chaos and despair. Strasbourg, a city accustomed to fairs, processions, and festive dances, had never witnessed anything like this. The dancing did not bring joy, it brought dread. Families watched helplessly as their loved ones lost control, their bodies racked with fatigue and pain, yet driven onward by a compulsion no one could understand. Even attempts to intervene were met with limited success. Town authorities, desperate to find a solution, began to organize public spaces specifically for the dancers, thinking perhaps that letting them dance freely would exhaust the affliction. Musicians were hired to play incessantly, drums and flutes echoing through the streets, a grim accompaniment to the mass dance. Some thought that music might soothe the dancers, or perhaps help the disease run its course. Yet, as the days passed, the epidemic only seemed to intensify. Medical theories of the time offered no clarity. Physicians suggested that the plague might be caused by hot blood or an imbalance in the humors. They prescribed rest, baths, and herbal remedies, yet none of it stopped the relentless movement. Others believed the city was cursed, punished by divine wrath, a manifestation of sin or moral failing. Chaplains preached to the crowds, calling for repentance, prayer, and fasting. Yet their words did little to quell the compulsion that gripped the dancers. By the end of July, the number of affected individuals had swelled dramatically. People danced until they collapsed, only to be replaced by new victims. The streets became a nightmarish river of movement, bodies swaying in unnatural rhythms. The city, once orderly, teetered on the brink of panic. Merchants abandoned their stalls, markets emptied, and the usual hum of daily life was replaced with the ceaseless thump of feet and the gasps of the exhausted. Neighbors whispered stories of supernatural intervention. Some claimed that a saint had cursed the city, others insisted that the dancers were bewitched, or that the devil himself was at play. Whatever the cause, it was clear that this was no ordinary illness. Strasbourg, a city that had survived plagues, wars, and famines, was now facing a bizarre affliction that confounded every expectation of reason and science. The longer the dancing continued, the more dire the situation became. Injuries mounted. Muscles tore, joints dislocated, and some succumbed to strokes or heart failure, victims of sheer physical overexertion. Yet even death seemed unable to halt the march of the plague. Its reach was relentless, claiming the bodies and spirit of the city alike. As the dancing plague consumed Strasbourg, scholars, physicians, and townsfolk scrambled for answers. The 16th century had no framework for such an inexplicable outbreak, and every theory seemed stranger than the last. One of the prevailing medical ideas focused on humoral imbalance. Physicians argued that those afflicted were suffering from an excess of hot blood, a condition thought to inflame the mind and body. Remedies were prescribed: bloodletting, herbal concoctions, and purges, all intended to rebalance the body's internal equilibrium. Yet, despite the best efforts of learned men, the dancing continued unabated. Patients were drained by exhaustion, yet their feet still moved, their arms still flailed, as if the humors themselves had taken on a life of their own. Another explanation came from religious authorities, who viewed the phenomenon as divine punishment. Strasbourg had endured droughts, poor harvests, and famine in recent years, and many believed that God's anger had manifested through these involuntary dances. Chaplains and priests called for days of prayer, penance, and fasting, hoping that public displays of devotion might halt the plague. Entire congregations gathered, singing hymns and processing through the streets, yet the dancers pressed on, seemingly indifferent to earthly appeals. Some townsfolk turned to superstition and folklore, weaving elaborate stories of witches, demons, and curses. Rumors circulated that a single sorcerer had bewitched the city, that an evil spirit had entered the dancers' bodies, or that a vengeful saint sought retribution for sins committed long ago. The desperate clung to these explanations, for they offered a semblance of understanding, even if grounded in fear rather than fact. Modern historians have since offered their own interpretations. One widely discussed theory points to ergot poisoning, caused by a fungus that grows on damp rye. Ergot contains alkaloids that can induce hallucinations, spasms, and convulsions, symptoms that might explain the frenzied movements. Contaminated bread could have affected large swathes of the population, leading to episodes of mass dancing. Yet even this theory falls short. Not every victim consumed rye, and the intensity of exhaustion, the duration, and the social contagion aspects cannot be fully explained by a simple fungal infection. Psychological explanations have also been considered. Mass hysteria, or mass psychogenic illness, may have played a critical role. In times of stress, hunger, disease, and social instability, groups of people can exhibit extreme behavioral patterns, influenced by one another's actions. The first woman to dance might have triggered a wave of contagion through fear, anxiety, and suggestion. As more people joined, the behavior escalated, creating a feedback loop of compulsion and exhaustion. Historians have noted that Strasbourg was experiencing extreme stress in 1518. The city faced economic hardship, famine, and epidemics, creating an environment where collective panic and psychological strain were at their peak. This combination of environmental pressure, social contagion, and individual susceptibility may have coalesced into one of history's most unusual epidemics. Despite the theories, no single explanation satisfies all aspects of the event. The plague of dancing remains a puzzle that straddles medicine, psychology, and superstition. The bodies, the exhaustion, the sheer number of people involved defy easy categorization. Scholars continue to debate whether it was ergotism, mass hysteria, divine intervention, or some combination of factors previously unimaginable. One thing is certain: the people of Strasbourg, caught in the grip of this inexplicable force, experienced suffering beyond comprehension. Pain, fatigue, and terror intertwined with social pressure, as the dancing refused to stop, and each day seemed to blur into the next. Streets became theaters of human endurance and inexplicable compulsion, leaving historians, centuries later, to wonder how such a bizarre event could overtake an entire community with such relentless force. By late July, the dancing plague had become impossible to ignore. The city authorities of Strasbourg were faced with a crisis unlike any they had ever encountered. Daily life had been disrupted, markets emptied, workshops shut, and the streets, once filled with ordinary chatter and commerce, now echoed with the relentless pounding of dancing feet. The citizens were desperate, and the city leaders were scrambling for a solution. Initial measures were cautious and conventional. Physicians examined the afflicted, documenting their symptoms, and prescribed traditional remedies. They recommended rest, herbal treatments, and bloodletting to restore balance to the humors, yet their efforts had little effect. The dancers continued, seemingly oblivious to medicine or admonition. The authorities soon realized that standard solutions were ineffective. In an attempt to control the situation, the city's council took an unprecedented step. They sanctioned the creation of special dance halls, large open spaces where afflicted individuals could move freely. The reasoning was grimly pragmatic. Officials believed that allowing the dancers to continue without interruption might prevent further injury from attempting to restrain them in streets or homes. Musicians were hired to accompany the dancers, playing drums, fiddles, and flutes to maintain rhythm, as if the city itself had become a stage for a deadly performance. This strategy, however, had mixed results. While it centralized the activity, it also amplified the problem. Seeing others dance seemed to encourage more people to join, creating a feedback loop of compulsion. The music that was supposed to guide or soothe the dancers instead acted as a catalyst, driving the frenzy further. Courtyards filled with bodies swaying and leaping in exhaustion became a terrifying spectacle for the city's residents. City leaders also sought spiritual intervention. Chaplains and priests were called upon to deliver sermons, organize prayers, and encourage the populace to engage in acts of penance. Pilgrimages were arranged, and processions through the streets attempted to appease divine forces. These measures reflected the deeply ingrained belief that the plague was not purely physical but also a moral or spiritual affliction. Still, even the most fervent prayers could not halt the movement. Efforts to physically restrain the dancers proved equally futile. Guards were posted in streets, tasked with preventing people from joining the throngs, but containment was nearly impossible. The contagious nature of the phenomenon, part physiological, part psychological, rendered enforcement ineffective. The city's frustration mounted as authorities struggled to balance public safety, compassion, and superstition. Despite these challenges, some incremental progress was made. Temporary quarantines of the most affected neighborhoods reduced the immediate spread, and attempts to rotate musicians and rest dancers occasionally slowed the pace of exhaustion. Yet overall, the plague continued for weeks, leaving a trail of weakened bodies, injuries, and fear throughout Strasbourg. By the end of July, it was clear that the dancing plague could not be solved by conventional means. The city had tried medicine, music, prayer, and physical intervention, and none had fully worked. The officials' efforts, though earnest, revealed the limitations of 16th-century understanding when confronted with an event that straddled the boundaries of medicine, psychology, and the supernatural. Strasbourg's citizens were left to witness an event that was as much a social contagion as it was a physical one. Entire neighborhoods were transformed into theaters of relentless movement, and each day brought new dancers into the streets. Families watched helplessly as loved ones succumbed to exhaustion, injuries, and sheer compulsion. The city, a hub of commerce, culture, and faith, was thrown into a state of unprecedented anxiety. Yet in the chaos, it also demonstrated remarkable resilience. Communities banded together, tending to the ill, supporting families, and trying to maintain order in the face of inexplicable circumstances. The plague was not only a test of physical endurance but also of social cohesion, faith, and human ingenuity. By August, the relentless dancing had finally begun to subside. Exhaustion, injury, and the natural limitations of the human body had claimed many of the afflicted. Streets that had once been filled with the chaotic rhythm of countless feet were now eerily silent. The city of Strasbourg, though relieved, was left to confront the grim consequences of the plague. The toll was staggering. Scores of people had died from heart attacks, strokes, and sheer physical exhaustion. Many more were left permanently weakened or injured. Families mourned the loss of loved ones whose lives had been cut short not by war or famine, but by an inexplicable compulsion that defied all reason. Homes and neighborhoods bore the marks of weeks of chaos: overturned carts, abandoned belongings, and streets worn smooth by constant movement. Medical observers documented the event meticulously. Physicians recorded symptoms, durations, and outcomes, hoping that future generations might glean understanding from the tragedy. Yet even centuries later, the cause of the dancing plague remains a matter of speculation. Was it ergot poisoning, mass hysteria, divine punishment, or some combination of factors? Scholars have debated, theorized, and analyzed, but the precise explanation remains elusive. The city itself, however, began to recover. Markets reopened, workshops resumed, and normal daily life slowly returned. Yet the memory of the dancing plague lingered in the collective consciousness of Strasbourg citizens. Chroniclers wrote of the strange epidemic in detailed accounts, preserving the story for posterity. These records ensured that future generations would learn not only of the suffering endured, but also of the resilience and solidarity of the city's people. The legacy of the dancing plague extended beyond Strasbourg. It became a case study for physicians, psychologists, and historians alike, illustrating the complex interplay between mind, body, and society. The epidemic challenged assumptions about disease, compulsion, and human behavior. It reminded communities across Europe that even in the most orderly cities, the forces of chaos and contagion could strike unexpectedly. For modern audiences, the dancing plague serves as a cautionary tale, a historical enigma that captures the imagination. It highlights the vulnerability of human societies to psychological, social, and environmental stressors. It also underscores the limits of scientific understanding, showing that even in the presence of observation and documentation, some phenomena may remain beyond explanation. Finally, the dancing plague of 1518 endures as a symbol, a reminder of human endurance, societal cohesion, and the mysterious forces that shape history. The streets of Strasbourg eventually quieted, but the story continues to echo through time, compelling us to ask, what drives humans to act against their own will? And how does a community survive when faced with an affliction no one can fully comprehend? Though centuries have passed, the memory of the dancers, twisting, leaping, and moving with relentless compulsion, remains etched in history, a haunting testament to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit.